by God's grace, because we really need God's grace, we're going to talk about a topic of fighting burnout. Can anybody tell me what burnout is? What is burnout? So I need you guys to have non-rhetorical questions today. Yes?
When you've exhausted all of your resources.
We've exhausted all of your resources. Okay, I think that is something that could lead to burnout. Yes, but it's a good point. Very good point. What else? Like, is anyone who has exhausted all the resources like burnt out?
Yeah.
Like anyone who's exhausted resources is burnt out. Can you explain a bit more then? Because I'm not.
So if I use up all of my energy in a day,
okay,
I am tired and I don't want to do anything else. Like I'm incapable of doing more.
Can I just adjust the in a day part to make it a bit longer? Like in a longer time,
Yeah,
because like in that one day, I don't know if you're gonna get burnt out in that one day, right? But you're kind of getting to a good point of how we use the word burnt out or burnout. Okay, good. Anything else? Can I get one more? What is burnout? Yes?
When you're constantly tired or unmotivated.
Constantly tired or unmotivated. Constantly puts a good time dimension on it, right? Like it's a long period of time, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a state of chronic fatigue, whether it be emotional, physical, or mental.
Yeah.
Spiritual, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. So the three of you guys are kind of saying something very similar, which is like it's you've exhausted your resources, you're fatigued, you're tired, it takes time. So I want to give you guys a few definitions. One from the American Psychological Association: burnout is an extended period of time where someone experiences exhaustion or a lack a lack of interest in things, resulting in a decline in their job performance. And for us who don't work, like we could say like service, in our service performance, we can say in our school performance, in our academic performance, right? So it's an extended period of time when someone experiences exhaustion and a lack of interest in things. There's another definition from Psychology Today that defines burnout as a state of emotional, mental, and often physical exhaustion brought on by a prolonged or repeated stress. Okay, so, and we'll talk more about these things. So, a survey conducted by Career Builder 2 or 3 years ago says that 61% of workers are burnt out. 61% of workers are burnt out. There's another statistic by a company called Yellow Brick. It's a psychiatric and trauma recovery center, and they surveyed 2,059 millennials. Who here is between 22 and 37 years old? Between 22 and 37, yeah. So it said that we responded. I'm in that group too, I'm a millennial. We responded, and we said that 96% of us believe that burnout affects our daily lives. Isn't that kind of crazy? Does anybody disagree with that? Yes.
I think we tend to overdiagnose and underestimate what we can do. Especially with something as subjective as like, what does burnout mean, right?
Yeah.
Surveying 2,000 people have different capabilities, and so.
Yeah. Good. Always being critical of the measurements, right? Of the results. Yeah. So you're saying, Mina, that people, you said something about underestimate what we can do. Can you explain that part?
So like, we take a full course load, 5 courses, and we say, oh, it's a lot to study for, whatever. But maybe to one person 5 is too much, and to another person they can do 7. As crazy as that sounds, right? Like,
do you mean overestimate what we can do?
We underestimate what we can do.
Like we could actually do more.
We can do more.
Oh,
so that's why we say we're burnt out.
Oh, okay. Like okay. So you're saying that actually, even if we feel burnt out, we might not actually be burnt out, and actually we have more capacity.
Yes.
Wow. That's for next week. It's a good point. It's a perspective. Like, what do you guys think of that? Do you guys think like, oh, actually, I feel like I'm burnt out, but maybe there's a possibility that I'm actually not even burnt out. I'm actually underworked. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'll piggyback off that point where it's like, there are some days where you think like, oh my God, work today or studies or whatever is so much, and then you'll have like, say finals come up, or you'll have like some sort of something you have to prepare for, and it's like, oh wait, no, all that other stuff was nothing compared to this. Now I'm actually feeling burnt out, whereas the other stuff is just kind of like maybe you're exaggerating that. If that makes any sense. Like some things you'll do, like some types of studies or work will like put other things into perspective. Like, oh, that's not that bad compared to like this.
Okay. So you find out. Okay. Okay. So actually, okay. So you're saying when something really big comes up, it really puts all that other stuff that you thought was burning you out into perspective, and actually, wait, you weren't burnt out.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, things can always get worse.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, can I suggest like an emotionally healthy approach? Can I make a suggestion? I do encourage you to check whether or not you're actually burnt out. Like even saying that you're burnt out, and we're going to talk about the difference between burnout and stress, because I think our generation uses the word burnt out so much. When you look at the definition, you're going to be like, I'm probably not burnt out. I'm probably just under a lot of stress. But I don't, the thing is, there is a much greater danger of actually being burnt out and being in denial of being burnt out. And that's a much more dangerous thing, right? So what I want to suggest for you is, if you feel burnt out, say to yourself, am I really burnt out? I just want to make sure that, just because I feel burnt out doesn't, or that's the word I have available to me, that I'm not actually burnt out. Because sometimes we get stuck in the words that we have available to us. We get stuck in thinking, using the language that we have, right? Like, are you guys getting distracted? Are you with me? You guys are with me? Okay. Sometimes in our minds, we get stuck because we're using certain words. We're using certain words, okay? But sometimes those words are not the words that we have to be using. We could use different words altogether, right? We could use different words. So if the only word I have available to me is like stressed and burnt out, and I see other people like really, really burnt out, and they are really, really stressed, and they use the word burnt out, and then I start using that word, then I think I'm burnt out, right? So the point I'm trying to make is, I suggest if you're saying I'm burnt out, make sure you're really burnt out. But never ignore that feeling, right? Like, never ignore that feeling, because the danger is much greater if you ignore it, okay? All right, so 96%, like these are like self-declared, self-identified people saying that they believe burnt out affects their daily life. What causes burnout? What causes burnout? One category of things is your lifestyle. Your lifestyle is that either you're working too much or without enough time for socializing or relaxing. I actually wanted to, I found Mina reminded me of a talk that we gave a few years back, actually like 5 years back around this. 5 years back, September 12th. Oh my gosh, wow. So what are all the things that were under that are like causing us pressure? Studying, career, family, relationships, health, self-image, and self-esteem. How about the fact that our culture in New York especially, or the tri-state area, is very like production oriented, right? Like we have to always produce, right? Does anybody feel like, oh, they could just wake up, they could do nothing for like the whole day, and they don't feel guilty about that? Like, I feel like many of us, especially me, if I wake up a little too late and I don't do much throughout that day, I'm like, wait, I feel like I wasted that day, right? I feel like I'm really guilty for that, right? There's energy drinks everywhere, right? Like there's like, in my work, there's this new like C4 energy drink. It has like this new thing in it, and it says, may cause skin tingling, it's harmless. So I only read that after the skin tingling. So I had it, and then my skin started tingling, and I'm in the middle of a meeting. And I'm like, I don't really feel too good. Like, am I okay? Like, am I dying? Like, what's happening? And then of course that like creates more anxiety, because like you think you're dying, right? So you're like, oh my gosh, right? And then the next time I went to get that drink, I saw on the side a little box that says, may cause harmless skin tingling in some, And
It's harmless in quotes.
No, it was crossed out. No, that wasn't in quotes for crossed out. It was there. It said harm. And I'm fine. I'm actually fine. It's about this Twitch. And then also, like, isn't it don't you sometimes feel like you're under a lot of pressure? I'll say this a little crazy, but don't you sometimes feel like you're under a lot of pressure to like pray, to like read the Bible? Like, doesn't that feel like, man, that's creating more anxiety? Like, I have all this stuff to do, and then you're telling me to pray, and then you're telling me to go to a meeting at church, and then you're telling me to, socialize and make good friends. I'm still trying to deal with like what I'm gonna wear tomorrow, the assignment I have due, the work I have to do, my crazy commute, right? Like, it never ends, right? It never ends. We're under so much pressure. We're under so much pressure. So our lifestyle can create a lot of burnout for us. Sometimes we take on too many responsibilities, and I want to tell you, which we'll come back to, sometimes we just don't get enough sleep, right? Like, sleep is not built into our schedule. Another thing that causes burnout is some personality traits. And anyone here who has a personality, please pay attention, which is all. So some of us are perfectionistic. Nothing is ever good enough. Like, nothing is ever good enough. That will definitely cause you to burn out at some point. If you're perfectionistic, forget about it. It's over. A pessimistic view of yourself in the world. The need to be in control or reluctance to delegate things. I remember, one of the things that I'm learning in service is that sometimes I just need to say I can't do it. I just need to say I can't do it, right? I just can't do it. It's too much. It's way too much, right? And if I add this one more thing, I'm going to be ineffective in everything, right? If I add this one more thing. Some of us are like so high achieving in all things. We're high achieving in like all things. Like, we don't really, like, I remember there's this couple, they'll come to therapy, and the wife is complaining because the husband doesn't spend any time with her and the kids. The husband is in school. The husband wants to get straight A's in everything. He's in a profession where it doesn't really matter if he gets straight A's. Like no one will ever ask him again, or ever ask him even the first time what his grades are, right? But he has a wife and kids complaining, not spending enough time. He gets home, he's so tired, he needs to take a nap, he needs to do all this stuff. And everyone is so sad, right? But he's getting straight A's, right? He's getting straight A's, right? What is one thing you would tell this husband to do?
Get B's.
Yeah, what? Get B's, right? Get B's, man. You have to choose, right? You can't achieve all things, right? You can't achieve all things, right? Especially if it doesn't matter, right? You have to choose, right? I remember someone gave me some good advice. He said, you have everything you want, just not all at once, right? You have everything you want, just not all at once. So we said lifestyle and we said personality traits. A third thing is just work related, so feeling like you have little or no control over your work, or lack of recognition or reward. So these things can really affect us. All right, what are some signs of burnout? One, psychologically, it could be reduced performance or productivity. Actually, if you're burnt out, you can become more anxious, right? And it's kind of weird, because if you're burnt out and you become more anxious, it could cause you to try to produce more because you're so anxious about failing, right? So you could be burnt out, so you're becoming more anxious, so you look at the risk of failure, and that makes you anxious, so you work harder, right? And you see how that kind of, it's just this downward spiral in life, right? You could become detached. You could feel like you have no purpose. You have a lot of difficulty concentrating, lack of creativity, fatigue. You can be quick to getting angry. Like, some people, when they're burnt out, they're just upset all the time. Like, they can't accept a new idea, right? Like, think about a good example of burnout. And it wasn't like, by the way, burnout is not like a psychological diagnosis. It's not like somebody can diagnose you with burnout. It's not in the manual. But Elijah, you guys know the story of Elijah after he conquered he won, there were I'll just tell you the story. So it's a lot, it'll take like 90 seconds, but there were, the people were worshiping idol, Baal and stuff. Thank you, Sam. And it'll take him 45 seconds. But they were worshiping Baal, and the priests, there were 400 priests, and Elijah challenged them. He said, look, you guys do a sacrifice, I'm going to do a sacrifice, and we'll see which sacrifice is accepted. They tried to do a sacrifice, it wasn't working, and they started cutting themselves, and they started dancing, and they were doing all this stuff, and their sacrifice wasn't accepted. And then Elijah said, oh, like, so Baal didn't accept your sacrifices, right? So he said, well, watch what I'm going to do, right? So he takes his sacrifice. He takes the animal, he cuts it in half, and he pours water over the whole thing, because if you have water over it and the fire comes down, it's like it really came down from heaven, right? If you put water and the thing gets burnt, right? So he puts water over it, and then he prays, and God sends fire down from heaven, and he takes the sacrifice. And then the queen Jezebel says to, so he wins, right? And then they kill the priests, and like the people are like, yeah, Elijah, everything's good. But then Jezebel says to Elijah, may the gods do to me what happened to those priests if I don't do the same to you by tomorrow, right? So he started like getting really, really stressed out, right? And he started running, right? He started running. So he started to get like really, really like scared and anxious and a lot of stress, and then he started to get burnt out, right? And then he started saying things like, what's going on here? What's my purpose? Like, I'm paraphrasing, but like, what's my purpose? Why am I doing? I'm gonna die. What is all this, right? And then, so one of the first things that God told him to do, or one of the first things that God did for him, was actually so simple. Does anybody know what God did with Elijah at that time? It's so simple, yes.
He made him take a nap.
He made him take a nap, right? He made him sleep, and he bought him food, right? Isn't that kind of crazy? I remember one time many years ago in this church, there were two servants who got into a fight, and it was a feast, and they got into a fight. And they got into a fight after the feast. So I remember this fight happened, and then one of the more senior servants just came up to them and he said, guys, it's too late. You have to sleep. Like you can't. Like, you're not going to get anywhere right now, right? You're not going to get anywhere, right? You're too tired. You're exhausted, right? So some of us, when we get burned out, we're not, number one, we get very easily agitated. But also, this is the one that's really important. Not the agitation one, even though that's really important, but what's even more important is that, are you guys with me? All right, it's really important. So if you're getting burnt out, just pay attention to this phrase. You're not accepting influence. You're not accepting influence, right? And one of the most important signs of any healthy relationship is that you accept influence from one another, right? You accept influence from one another, right? Like if you see a married couple, or you see friends, or you see like a team, and they're not able to influence each other, right? Then you're like, there's a lot of trouble here, right? You have to be able to accept influence. When we're burnt out, we are not able to accept influence. So someone tells us, hey, I have an idea, or what if we tried this, or hey, can you please do this? And you're just like, wait, I'm sitting down. Why do you want me to do that, right? You won't even accept the influence of a request, right? So that's something that's happening psychologically. You could become emotionally numb or cynical. Like everything is just negative. You know, like, hey, bro, how's life? And you don't say much, right? You don't say much. Any questions or comments so far? You guys with me so far? Okay. Other signs are physical. So you could be exhausted. You could get aches in your body, headaches. I know someone who, when they're really stressed out with studying, they have a bowel movement like multiple times a day, right? Multiple times a day, right? They're so stressed, right? They're so stressed, right? High blood pressure, difficulty sleeping, increased susceptibility to illness and muscle tension. I remember one time I was sitting in a class in college, and the professor just said, "Okay, everyone, put your shoulders down." And all of a sudden, we realized that most of us sitting there, our shoulders were so tense, you know? And we just kind of let them go, like, wait, there's that much more distance to put my shoulders down? I didn't realize that I could do that, right? Because we're also, like, tensed up, you know, all the time. We're in college, we're going from class to class, trying to figure out what we're going to eat, and all this stuff, all these demands, grades, papers, whatever, parents, life, all this stuff, right? All right. So I want to distinguish between burnout and stress, and a phrase that I think is helpful, or a group of phrases I think is helpful, is stress is about too much, burnout is about not enough. Stress is about too much, and burnout is about not enough, okay? And that's where I think everyone's getting, and even me, we're getting challenged in our understanding of burnout versus stress, right? Because sometimes we just say when we're really stressed, or we're really busy, or we're really tired, or we're exhausted, we think, oh, I'm burnt out. But I want us to really, that's kind of like one end of the spectrum, to be burnt out. And I don't want us all to feel like you're either okay, or you're stressed, or you're burnt out. There's a spectrum, right? Because once you label yourself burnt out, there's a risk that you might just like give up hope and say, oh, I'm burnt out. It's over, right? But I want you to see that actually, maybe if there's a spectrum, maybe I can be like 10% less of whatever I am, or maybe I can be 10% more, right? So there's a grade that you can be like back to health. Does everybody get what I'm saying? Okay, there's a grade, right? So please, like, we get stuck, some of the way we think about our problems, we get stuck into like, I have to cover all this distance to go back to healthy. Why should I even start? Look at all that distance, right? This applies even to repentance, right? Or coming back to church, right? We say, oh, how can I repent of all of these sins, right? Or how can I learn all of those Bible verses that everybody else knows, right? Or how can I forgot how late we started, so it's so late, guys. I'm gonna get burnt out. So when we're stressed, very stressed, or even burnt out, I want us to not get so even more stressed about how much needs to happen for you to come back to a healthy state, right? Just think about it in degrees, in pieces, right? To get back to health, it can happen in pieces. So stress is about too much, and burnout is about not enough. And I'm going to compare these two things, okay? I want to compare these two things. So stress is characterized by over-engagement, okay? Burnout is characterized by disengagement. Okay, so stress is like you're overly engaged. I'm gonna, create that retreat. I'm gonna make it work, or I'm gonna work really hard on this paper. I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna practice. I'm gonna go to the gym and work really hard. I'm gonna exercise. I'm gonna lift so much, whatever people do at the gym. So, whatever people do at the gym, I don't do that stuff at the gym. So, I just talk about it. So, but burnout is characterized by disengagement, where you're like, whatever, right? Yes?
How would you identify it, like burnout, being disengaged versus just being lazy? Like if, let's say you have a lot of work to do, whatever, and you just procrastinate. Like to some college students, like you have so much to do and there's a lot going on, so you just disengage and you're just like, I'm just gonna leave it for tomorrow, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that because they're being burnt out, or is that just procrastinating?
So let me, can we come back to that so we can, because I want to combine it. That's the thing, the point, you're raising a good question, because the problem is, guys, we label ourselves too much. We label ourselves too much, and we assume we're in the worst stage. Like yesterday, just yesterday, I found out bad news. It's not like horrible, but just news that was very, not happy for me. So, and I was getting a haircut. I still get a haircut in Ridgewood. And I was going, and I'm leaving, and I was pretty sad. And I'm just walking, right? And I didn't realize that my head was down, and I was really sad. So, and then some guy standing at the bodega, the corner store, and just some guy, he was just in some ragged clothes, sometimes people just stand outside the store, And he's just standing there, and he's like, hey, yo! And I'm like, okay, there's other people walking around. He's like, hey, yo, you! And so the second time I turn around, he's like, keep your head up high. There's still hope. And I'm like, oh, I was like, thank you, man. I said that's like a spark up I said, thank you, And so, sometimes when we're down, we kind of we can take ourselves and we can, you guys want the technical term, the therapy term? It's called catastrophizing, right? We can think that we're in the worst situation. We're in the worst situation, right? I remember one time this, I was seeing a couple for therapy, and the wife was a few weeks away from delivering her baby, right? She was a few weeks away from delivering her baby. And I said, oh, okay, like, how is this going for you, whatever. And she started to say some really valid things, right? She started to say some really valid things. And some of these she and I'll share with you, she was saying like, oh, like, I'm actually really worried about, like, my body's never gonna be the same again. It was her first child, right? My body's never, this is a very valid thing, right? It's like, she's there's a little bit of a grieving process there where your body's gonna change permanently, right? And she's saying, and, I don't know how we're gonna be able to divide up responsibilities. I'm just very anxious about the delivery process and all this stuff. And she kept going and going and going and going. She probably listed like 12 like discrete reasons for why this is a horrible experience. Right? Did I tell this guy's story before? Anybody heard this? So 12 things, and I'm like watching, and I'm like, okay, I know what's going on here. This is catastrophizing, right? I said, oh, okay, like, it sounds like you're preparing for a disaster, right? I kind of tried to like say an extreme word so she could say, oh, no. But so I said, it sounds like you're preparing for a disaster. And then I said, can you list for me maybe like 5 positive things that might happen, when you have a baby? Like a baby. and she started to list them, She said, oh, and then this and that. And I said, and how about like, people say that like that first time you see the baby, that they feel like something like almost magical happened, right? And then she's like, yeah. And then I said, well, how about like, like when your baby like does like silly things that are so cute, like pees in your face, What do you think of that? I just started laughing. And then I said, there's also like, what about like family traditions, right? And what about like holidays? And she's like, yeah, the holidays, like Christmas and stuff. I said, what about some other holidays, And you guys know what other holiday is. What's the other holiday? Mother's Day, right? I said, how about Mother's Day, right? How about Father's Day, right? So do you guys see, like if she didn't have someone to challenge this type of thinking, and I think we're getting to where Mina was going, but if we didn't have anyone to challenge that thinking, imagine she just said, I'm burnt out, right? And that's it. We're done, right? But sometimes it's not just you're at the end of that spectrum. You're not just in that bucket, right? So I just want us to be careful that actually maybe you're somewhere in between. And maybe if you do like one little thing to help you, which we'll talk about, you might get a bit closer to being less of that stressed, anxious, bad state that you're in, right? You could be less of that, and then less of that, and then less of that, and then you'll be fine, You guys get what I'm saying? Okay. So we said characterized by overengagement, characterized by disengagement. In stress, emotions are overreactive. In burnout, emotions are blunted, meaning like they're kind of like they're not even coming out in full force anymore. It's kind of like short-lived, right? Stress produces urgency and hyperactivity. Burnout produces helplessness and hopelessness. Okay, are you guys starting to see that when we say burnout, we may not really mean burnout. We might mean like a lot of stress. Stress is loss of energy. Burnout is loss of motivation, ideals, and hope. Stress leads to anxiety disorders. Burnout leads to detachment and depression. I have 2 more. Stress is the primary damage is physical. The burnout, the primary damage is emotional. Stress may kill you prematurely. Burnout may make life seem like it's not worth living, right? So do you guys see like how these are different things, like stress versus burnout? Okay, so I only have like 2 more sections here. One of them is what can burnout do to you, like how can it impact you, and what can I do about it? Do you guys want to talk about both or just the what can I do about it part? Both? Okay, all right. So how does what does it do to you? Quickly, the short-term impacts are your productivity levels are low. You can become just like absent. Like some people, they just don't show up. Some people don't show up. Sometimes it's because they're actually just like irresponsible, and sometimes it's because they're burnt out, right? Sometimes they're actually burnt out, and there's like a major issue that's causing them to not show up. Like I know there's some people who like you can't get them to leave their home. They're like in a really, really down state. And short term, your commitment to like achieving something can be minimal. The long term it's really crazy, like heart disease, diabetes, anxiety, insomnia. And it could affect your relationships. Burnout, the long term effects can impact your relationships. One thing that's really important is like, please take care of yourselves because you are part of a system. You're part of a system, right? Like you're not just responsible for yourself, you're responsible to others. You're responsible to others. And this is the sign of a mature person. A mature person is aware of their responsibility to others, okay? And if you don't get this now, it's going to be a very rude awakening when you start to establish more committed relationships in your life, okay? Let me just say that again. A mature person is not just responsible for themselves, they have a responsibility to others. And if you don't like internalize and appreciate that message now, when you start to commit in more and more relationships, you're gonna be really, really struggling, right? So it's not just about me, right? Like if I get burnt out or if I get really stressed, I affect many other people, right? I affect many other people, right? Because I'm a person, right? I'm a person, I'm an adult. There's things expected of me, right? Like I have to be there for people, right? So please don't just, like, this is an adult room, right? So don't just think of yourself. Don't just think of like, so I'm not trying to say, hey, more pressure to be better, more pressure to be less stressed. No, I'm saying more pressure to make an effort to be better. Like make an effort to try to heal, to try to recover, to try to grow, right? To try to get help. Try to get help, right? Try to get help, right? All right, so last thing, what can I do about burnout? By the way, Verena, did I answer your question or no? So a little bit. Yeah. So your question was like, how do you know that somebody's like burnt out or they're just like lazy, right? So what I would say is like if you look at all the other signs, like for example, they're more anxious, right? It's as if they have no purpose. Like, there's people who just don't want to. They're lazy because they don't want to do work, right? But then there's some people who are like, I have no purpose in life. Like, what's the purpose of my existence? Right? And maybe that seems a little weird to like see, but people have that. Some people are just kind of like roaming around and they don't really know like why. You know, they don't feel like they belong to anything. If these people are having difficulty concentrating, if they're fatigued, right? If they're quick to get angry, if they're getting like headaches or they're getting aches or they're having insomnia. So that's what I'm trying to say is like the way to distinguish is not just one thing. It's not just one criteria. You have to look at many things, right? And maybe let me just say one other point because I don't know when I'll be able to say this another time. Is like, please don't be so quick to judge, and I don't mean judge like judgment, like to condemn someone. I mean judge like to determine what the issue is. Don't be so quick to say, oh, obviously the issue is this, right? Or obviously the solution is that, right? Like, please don't do that, okay? Like, just don't do that. Something we were just saying at a retreat last week on mental health. I was saying a very simple counseling tip that everyone can apply, okay? Because everyone will always be approached, by someone who has a challenge. If anybody approaches you with a problem, ask a minimum of 5 questions, okay? Ask a minimum of 5 questions, maybe even 10 questions, maybe even 10, So please don't be so quick to just say, like, to think you know what's going on. You are always ignorant of someone else's circumstances. You are always ignorant of someone else's circumstances. No matter how much you listen, you don't know.
Especially if it's suffering.
Especially if it's suffering, yeah. Like, and that's, like, this is, by the way, like, such a beautiful thing in life, because once you can internalize this reality, the reality that you have no idea, right, that you're just a student of the other person, then what you're going to do is it frees you completely, right? You're no longer trying to, like, go out and solve, you're no longer, like, feeling like you have to perform, right? You're always listening and taking in and absorbing and demonstrating appreciation for others, right? Because once you think you know, that's when you start building walls in the relationship, right? Even you watch people who are very close. Like, let me tell you guys like a simple example. I'm sorry to keep using the husband and wife example, but imagine a husband and wife, right? They're getting married. Well, they're married. They're husband and wife. So, and they're having like an issue. They're having an issue, right? Think about them, right? For 20-something years at least, right? Unless they got married really early. But for 20-something years, they probably didn't know each other, most likely, right? Even maybe, let's just say, for 5 years, if they were like junior or like preschool sweethearts or something, you know, whatever. But on average, there's like 20 years of life that they can never appreciate that, right? And their cousins might know them better than you know them, right? You guys get what I'm saying? Right? Because maybe you grew up with your cousins, right? And your cousins are around you and all that stuff. Your cousins may know more about you than your spouse will ever know for about a certain period in your life and the most formative years, right? You guys get what I'm saying? Right? So if these spouses think they know each other, like, and they're not listening, right? They're going to be in a lot of trouble. But that doesn't just apply to husband and wife. It applies to friends, right? It applies to each other, like the people who are sitting next to you in this room. If someone comes up to you with a problem, ask questions, because you need to ask questions, man. Like, you don't know anything, right? I don't know anything, right? And before we are quick to give solutions or to label what's going on, we have to listen and understand. And then when we think we know something, please, like, suggest it. You know, don't say, you have to this, you must that, or this is, what you're doing is this, right? Don't do that. Suggest. Like, say, I think, like, you know what, and play it back, you know? You guys get what I'm saying? You guys good? All right, I'm just checking in. All right, so, why did I say that? Oh, I was saying, because I was trying to bring this point about, so you get what I'm saying? Like, it's complicated, right? And we're all part of a system, and we all affect each other, and we have responsibility. All right, so, what can I do about it? Number one is connect with others. Reach out to those closest to you. Be more sociable with your coworkers. Limit your contact with negative people. You see, one of the challenges, and it's kind of a weird thing to say, because I don't think our culture supports this so much, but it's really important. Sometimes the answer is distance. That's it. That's it. Sometimes the answer is distance. And that's it. Forever. It could be forever. Okay? It could be forever. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay? Can I give you some examples? Like, I'll give you an extreme example. Extreme example, right? This is really, it's so extreme I almost feel kind of weird saying it's going to change the mood of the room, but imagine a woman was sexually abused. Okay? Imagine a woman was sexually abused, right? What some people would say is you need to, like, forgive the person. I think that's true. You need to forgive the person. No matter what, you forgive the person. But what about reconciling with the person? Like, should like they go hang out now?
No.
No, right? No. So this is an extreme example. Let's say, fine, you go to church and there's someone who's, you know, I'll use this term even though we feel like we're too old for it, but we're not. And someone is like bullying you, or someone is not treating you well at church here. You know, they're always ignoring you, or maybe they think they're not doing anything mean, but they're just teasing you. But it's too much. It's like becoming too much. And you try to talk to them about it, and they weren't taking any influence, right? You tried everything. You tried to talk to them. You tried to have someone else talk to them. Whatever. Should we force you to keep going to that person, to that place where it's painful and you're exposing yourself to hurt? No, right? We don't do that. So we have to accept if the circumstances are not healthy for us, if the environment, if the person, if the relationship, if whatever is not healthy for us, and we have to be able to cut it off. One of the things that causes us the greatest stress and burnout is when you feel like you don't have the ability or you're not entitled to cut it off. You guys know what I'm saying? So if you feel stuck, like you can't get out of it, that's what creates the burnout. See what I'm saying? So once you feel stuck, like think about it when you were younger and you didn't have any freedom, right? You're younger, and your parents are driving you crazy, right? And some people with their parents are driving you crazy. But you wanted, sometimes you like, what created the most stress is that you can't leave, right? You can't do anything about it, right? You can't do anything about it, right? Or think if you're in a relationship, or think if you're in a job, or think if you're in like a major in college, and you're under so much pressure to finish that major by 100 people, by your peers, by your parents, by the servants, by everyone, right? And you don't feel like you can say, no, I don't want to do it anymore. Once you lose that feeling that you're entitled to say no, that's when the burnout, you're at risk for burnout. You guys get what I'm saying? All right, so sometimes the right answer is to cut things off, but just make sure it's the right answer. Like don't make any like rash decisions because you're under stress. It's not, you don't make decisions under stress just like that. Yes.
Are there any situation that you have to work it out? Like marriage, for example. Yani, marriage, if it's not very healthy, هتعمل ايه؟
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, like when we get to these like difficult cases, it has to be case by case. I'll tell you first, if there's abuse, like, you know, I fully support like safety. Like that's the first priority, safety, right? We establish a plan. Like let's just say, you know, one of the spouses is hitting the other one. We have to establish safety. We have to establish a plan. Like, what are you going to do if you feel like you're in danger? Let's plan that out. Let's make sure it's ready to go, right? Because sometimes in our culture, especially, we think that it's healthier to keep the parents together for the kids' sake. But sometimes that's not the healthy thing, because all we're doing is raising abusers that are going to get married and abuse their spouses, right? And so we have, and they're sending a very wrong message to the kids, right? And also it says to the, what does it say about us as the church? You know, imagine a kid is saying, you know, my mother's getting hit, or my father is being cheated by his wife. She's taking all the money and putting it somewhere else, and the church just says, you know, just stay. Like we're sending a very weird message.
It's your cross.
Yeah, we say it's your cross, right? And honestly, that used to work in a time where people couldn't live on their own. But now we're higher up in the hierarchy of needs, right? Like here, you know, everyone individually can live on their own. So they're like, wait, why would I stay in this? You know, I can just have my direct deposit from my job, go to another bank account, and just leave, continue going, right? So, it doesn't mean though that the abuser is the only one at fault, by the way, too. Because sometimes it's very easy to say that the person who cheated or the person who is hitting, that they're 100% at fault. There's no tolerance for abuse. Cheating is always going to be wrong. But also, things happen in the system, and usually the other person is responsible too. So that's the thing. Like that's why it's case by case. Because if someone is like being like abused, we're going to, the first most important thing is to establish safety and make sure that stops. But then we want to see, are they both willing to do work? If they're not willing to do work to change their dynamic, then what are we going to do? We have safety, but the safety could be separation for a while. So they're going to be separated forever if they're not going to be able to do work. So I think it's case by case. I think, of course, like what we want as a church is for everyone to be in fellowship and to be in communion and to be united. We don't want any of these things to create permanent divisions or separations. But even St. Paul was willing to separate someone from the church. But because that person did work, he repented, he brings them right back, right? So that's the thing, because once we're afraid of no, we can never have full yes. Do you get what I'm saying? Like once we're afraid of the distance, we can never have closeness, full closeness. That's actually a really profound statement. I have to say that often. So, but do you guys get what I'm saying? Like, please remember, because you have to find in your life, where don't I have a voice? where can't I say no, right? Because once you lose the ability to say no, you can never fully say yes in life, okay? So, for example, like imagine you tell this, like, let's just use the example of the woman being abused by her husband. And may God protect all of us. Like, if we can't give her a way to be safe, you can never tell her, hey, open yourself back up to change and to, speak to your husband differently or something. She's too scared. She can get hurt, But once you say, hey, there's a way for us to create distance. Let's create the distance and let's work, and then we'll come back together when things are done. But if there's no, then there can never be a full yes. I hope that's helpful. What else can you do about burnout is find new friends. Please, like another thing, we need new friends, guys, sometimes. Not all friends are helpful. That's it. Like sometimes it might take you like 5 years to realize like, maybe that childhood friend can't be my friend anymore because they're not really helpful in any way. They're only like harmful. So, or unhelpful. So sometimes that. Okay. The last few things, just for time's sake, are reframe the way that you look at your circumstances. Try to find some value in what you're doing. Find balance in your life. Make friends at work or school or church or whatever, and take time off. Like sometimes, again, like can I give you guys another quick counseling tip? Because if I was you, I'd be really interested. So always just ask yourself this question. Is there a different way of looking at this? Just ask that question to yourself, right? Sometimes the stress in our lives is because we're looking at what's happening in only one way, right? And sometimes, I'll tell you, like sometimes if I'm sitting with a couple or a family or something, all I'm doing is asking another person in the session another way of looking at things. And once they realize what I'm doing, I'm like, did you guys need to pay for this session? You don't need to pay for it. You can just do this on your own. Just ask each other's opinion and listen, because sometimes all we need, there are different ways of looking at things. And sometimes what's causing us burnout is that we're looking at things in one way. Maybe that's what's causing our anxiety. Maybe that's what's causing pressure. It's causing stress because we're looking at things only one way. So the way to change that is called reframe. Like look at it differently. And reevaluate your priorities is another thing. Set boundaries. Take a break from technology. Relax. And I can't tell you guys, like I'm not speaking from as an expert. I'm just saying sleep is so important. Sleep is so important. I'm personally, I'm sure, I don't know if deprived applies to me, that word, but I definitely don't get enough. And I think we all really need to get more sleep. Exercise really helps. And lastly, just manage your diet, because that will really help. Like a lot of times you see because remember I said that we're all part of a system. Remember I said that? This is my last point. But also, you individually are a system, right? So you're a system, you're part of a system, like your closer relationships are a system. Every dyad here, every two people here are a system. Every person you're sitting next to is a system. The whole room is a system. We're part of the church is a system. Everything is a system, right? So everything affects each other. So your body is like feeding back to itself all the time, right? Your mind, your heart, your spirit, everything is feeding back. It's not just one direction, right? So when you're tired, when you're not eating well, when you're sad, whatever, right? Or when you're like under stress, under pressure, or if you're like spiritually like just completely disconnected from God, then these things affect each other. So you have to like take care of these things, right? Like it's not just one thing. So sometimes we just have to like sleep better. Sometimes we have to eat better. Sometimes if we're eating too many carbs, we might like feel a little heavier. We might get tired quickly, whatever it is. And also alcohol can really the problem is that with alcohol sometimes, depending on why you're using it, especially if you're using it to kind of like disconnect from reality, which I'm not saying everyone who drinks alcohol does it for this reason, but some people drink alcohol to enough to disconnect from reality. What a lot of times what that could do is it provides a temporary relief, but also it can create more anxiety when you come back, right? And that's something that you have to be really careful about, right? Because you think that that's what you need to help you, and it feels good immediately, but you're actually creating more anxiety for yourself, right? So please be careful about those things. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I want to say something. Back to the idea of we are part of the system. We need to learn to support each other because we have to understand what other people are going through. Instead of saying, oh, yani, people go through difficult situations in their life. We need to understand this and we need to support each other.
Yeah, and please guys, like, you know, I'm going to say this in a bit of a tough way because I love you guys, but enough of not initiating conversation with others. Enough of that. Please find I'm trying to control the passion that I'm going to say this with, but please find the person who is not talking to anyone and initiate a discussion. Please, like, enough. You know, like. You have no idea how therapeutic that is. You have no idea how much of a difference you make. You are like, when you do that, you're like a miracle worker. You're doing the work of God, right? That is the work of God, right? When you find someone who's new, who doesn't have someone to talk to, and you initiate a conversation, please, whatever you need to think to, like, not whatever, but like, if there are many different ways to think about that, about doing that, to overcome your anxiety, to overcome whatever, just to go up and talk to that person. You can tell yourself it's a service. Tell yourself it's a service. Go, and as a service, go and initiate a conversation, right? Tell yourself, oh, they're probably an interesting person, they're going to teach me something. Go. Whatever you need to do to motivate yourself, but it's too, like, you're missing out on so much opportunity in life and as a system and as a community because you don't have, or we don't have this one skill, this one behavior, which is to initiate new conversations. Think about, this is, you know, if we think about it this way, this is what Jesus was doing all the time. That's why I mean it's the work of God. Think about how many times Jesus was like the best at initiating new conversations. He goes up to Zacchaeus. Hey, what's up, man? You know, he goes to the woman who's caught in adultery. Hey, don't do that anymore. He goes to the Samaritan woman. Hey, can I get some water, please? All he's doing, he's going around, just going. And he sees Matthew, Levi, collecting taxes. Hey, come and follow me. All he's doing, he's just going around everywhere, initiating conversations, right? Where did that go? Or what happened to that behavior? This is such a critical a practice of a Christian, right? Such a critical practice. Don't let your own weaknesses, no matter what it is, whether you're too busy, whether you're too socially involved or engaged to separate from the group you're in, to go start a conversation. Remember, Jesus left the disciples to go wait at the well for the Samaritan woman, right? Like, he left his social group to go and meet just this one person to go talk to her, right? You guys see what he did? And very often he did that. The disciples were like, where is he? Like, where is Jesus? Where did he go? Right? And he's going around, and you don't know what he's doing. He's going and he's doing all this stuff. Do you guys get this point? Like please, this is you want the solution? Just go start these conversations and ask 5 questions. You'll be all right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, glory be to God forever.